other things that change out, like at least a lot of the fairleads.
Yeah.
No matter, you know, the nice thing is because you guys mostly have buggies, so you don't really have to worry about it, like as you're nosing into stuff, right? And the angles that you're getting into with that. It's only like the like this kind of thing when you see in like how shallow the departure angles are on those fairleads, and you're just putting a stress riser on it. Right? Plus, it's also keeping it exposed, right, as you're crawling and doing that kind of thing anyway. But that line has got that protective sleeve on there, so it's only a pain in the ass when you go to like cut them or try to splice them, because you got to take the sheathing off of it just to get to the line underneath of it, and that's like a total nightmare. Somebody home make that?
No, that's a Voodoo.
Okay.
This is my truck.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
No, that's a Voodoo winch ropes or whatever.
Yeah, so like you feel that, you see that's the fairleads are so shallow. So what happens is when you start to winch on them, it's putting extra heat.
Yeah, actually right here in the center, it has a wear spot.
Just from, I'm getting in there for where the line is at. So, well, the other thing is just to avoid it.
That one.
Yeah.
What was that?
So my dingle hopper
Dingle hopper.
came with it, so I left it on there because I thought it was exciting.
I've never seen that before.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
I was thinking about painting it pink.
That's impressive. Justin's never seen that. Because you put the, well, because the 9.5 XP is a 6 horsepower motor, so that's why this winch was so badass. But that's why they make these. That motor now goes on the 8274 because it does more things than this one does. So yeah. Yes. And who's got the Gladiator?
Mine. That's the one.
That was from last year.
Last year, yeah.
Yeah.
You guys fixed the end on it.
That's right. Yeah. Todd was like in the middle of the night there last
Yep.
year. When
Yep.
you were down there.
You and Tom. How many Jeeps do you own? 8. You have a problem.
Hey, I technically have like 6 Toyotas right now.
That's a Jeep problem, my wife says.
I think the oil's giving it more strength.
It actually derates the line by close to 20%.
Does it really?
Yeah. We just destructively tested some soft shackles that are used in industrial capacity, and when you start to pull them under load, it starts squeezing the oil. You'll see the oil dripping out of it, and coming out of it, and then they fail early. Right. So it's really kind of it's a big problem for like industrial application kind of stuff like that. That's why all the soft shackles have got that outer woven sheath on there to keep that from penetrating into the fibers to do it.
All right, who's got this sharp knife?
You want me to sharpen
This
that
one's
vent blade
decent.
for you?
Yeah, you have
Corey's
one.
a sharp.
Yeah, this is brand new.
I can go get my.
There we go.
Way better.
Hold on. So one of the things, like when Warren did this with their fairleads, so part of the deal with the fairleads that these are all like they're just cast aluminum.
Yeah,
right?
I broke
Yeah, so that's why when you tag them on the rocks, they shatter.
Yeah.
So
I broke one.
You can see here too, because the pressure from the heat from the winch line, that's why it's stacking up on there. That's residue of the winch rope left over from passing over top of that surface. So especially when you get like nicks and rocks and stuff getting flung back at the vehicle, you can see how it starts to pit and chip that, and then you're trying to have this line go over, and that's what ends up screwing this up. So that's why with our fairleads, they're mil-spec hard anodized. So, and they're machined at a solid billet, either 1 inch or 1.5 inch thicknesses. And so that keeps that grit and that dirt and all that stuff from the winch line from scratching that surface, so it makes the line last longer.
Gotcha.
So that's the whole thing about upgrading the fairlead to do that, because when you see some of these shallow end fairleads, the problem is that departure angle is even worse. So it starts to melt and tear the line up, especially under load. Because you're trying to deal with, like, you're talking about the mire tire depth, right, of these vehicles, because once they get bound up, you know what I mean, they're forced and twisted and side to side, right? So you need that pressure to kind of move them up there that way. So now what this is, since I'm doing this because since you have one here, and you know, when it comes to like the for like the race car especially, right? So one of the things that we did this last year before SEMA was we had taken I have a buddy of mine named Chris Bowman who he's got a K5 Blazer on.
Yeah, he's from Idaho.
Yeah. So
Yeah, Mountain Havoc.
yeah, so he's from Mountain Home and we're from Boise.
Yeah.
So like I know, you know, I've known Chris forever.
I met him at Top Truck.
Exactly, right? So he started doing this forever ago when it came to using like our parts, but I never gotten around to the point of like being able to destructively test the thing to really find out like how the thing was going to function until we were able to put it on, you know, into the test bed and be able to go like, oh, okay, well, now we know that it breaks above 25,000 pounds, right? So we knew that it was going to retain the line, because this rope will break anywhere between 18 and 22,000 pounds, right, on average. So this ends up becoming a deal where you can take the end like a small extension into this.
Just dive in. It can't.
Chinese finger cuts itself.
Yeah, so just like the wire basket grabs onto the end of the line, just like a Chinese finger trap, right? That's exactly what the tail of the rope is doing inside of itself. That's why when you break the line, you know, you see all these guys are like, well, I'm just gonna tie a knot in it. Well, the problem is when you tie a knot in it, you create a bite, and when you create that bite point in the
chop
line,
itself and
it derates the rope. So like when we first got into this and doing that, you know, I had worked on boats and teach scuba, and so, you know, typically, especially in all kinds of the mountain rescue and in the marine world, you see like a bowline, right? A bowline knot.
Yeah.
Well, the bowline I thought for sure was like, man, I mean, we've used that in rescue scenarios and all kinds of different things, and I thought that was going to be the one. It actually breaks at 65, it derates the line by as much as 65% because of the way the line bites into itself. So the only way to retain the full breaking strength of the winch rope is to splice it. And that's the appropriate way to do it. So now for this won't matter because of like, you know, typically for when it comes to, you know, for in a recovery scenario during the race, only because when it comes to being like the dedicated points and, you know, being what you guys are doing to recover the vehicles, it's not going to matter that much, only because you'll have the time to, like, as you're walking up to the rig, do all this stuff. It really matters for more about jumping out of the car and figuring out a way to make it work as fast as possible, because you never, you know, these guys are going to be on every trail, right? You know, so, these rope fibers are so strong. So what happens is that when it flares out, right, those individual fibers in between there start grabbing on the tails of the other thing. So this is a little tired, so we're going to just cut a little bit extra off the end of this. Thanks, sir.
If you had to tie a knot, let's say you're racing, you have 30 seconds to hook up a winch line, what knot is the strongest that you've experienced?
Really is like the constrictor knot is the strongest way to do it.
Okay.
And I can show you how to tie it here in a second. And you got to practice, because you'll forget how to do it.
Yeah.
Right, so we're just creating a taper in the end of the line, right, to keep it for, you know, buried down in between here. So once you have that on there, you can take this thing and then just bury it back into itself. Right? So, and we'll clean that up, but, you know, essentially now what this does is that you have like a quick on and off that's just built in right at the end of the hook.
dope.
Right? So now when you get out of the car and you got to go to winch to something, you're like, well, what do I got to grab to? You can just wrap it around whatever it is. You know what I mean? Stuff the thing back in there. Dude, that creates
Double back to the line.
Yeah. Double back, or even mess with the soft shackle. That makes it quick.
So that makes it, so now you're not having to deal with that. And then if this fails or you break something, I mean, it's just as simple to cut it off and you still have access to what you're using the part for, right? So this is like that little technique that I'm lovingly calling the hammer loop.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Right? And then you need more rubber pads for that too as well.
That's good.
Fell off. Now that'll work right while you're racing, even when you got gloves on too.
Yeah.
Right? And we'll get you a new piece to go on this. But essentially,
Okay.
right, you roll up and just throw that around something, you can snap that thing in there, and then with it going with the hook facing up, it will slide itself. You know what I mean? Under pressure, it's going
Right.
to slide itself into the gap that where it needs to.
Awesome.
And then you can just simply unhook that thing when you're done.
I love it.
Right.
That's
So
awesome.
that'd be a really cool method to kind of put it.
Definitely faster.
It's way faster.
Yeah.
Because this is like this has got a Brummel lock in it, so it's double backed onto itself. So the Brummel lock really doesn't, I mean, it's strong enough, but what happens is it does create a bite, so it's actually weakens the rope by about 10% from its
You're
breaking
talking
strength.
when we wove through it.
Yeah, exactly. So this
So
one,
you won't do that, and you'll just dive into.
yeah. So this locks it into place here.
It's
So
not
like-
adjustable.
yeah, so
Yeah.
it's not adjustable. So you kind of want that loop to be a little bit bigger as you're coming into this.
Right.
We'll take care of that with the car anyway.
Okay, awesome.
Plus, you want to replace the line, and then we can cut the rest of this up and use it for like, extensions or whatever else that you're gonna do.
What?
So we invented the Ultra Hook for, mostly for this, right? Ultra 4, Ultra Hook. That's kind of where it came from.
Yeah.
But now it's been utilized.
Are you guys
by-
the creator of that one?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Factor
we
55
make that.
design.
Oh,
that
that's
one.
sick.
Yeah. So a lot of things, even when it comes to like the Ultra Hook in general, why we designed that part to begin with is because it was the only hook in the world that still allowed you to have like a closed system shackle mount at the end of it, right? And then also it's got finger grips, because even when you use a winch hook, you should always hook from underneath, because if a hook were to tip load and opens up, it shoves it towards the ground versus coming down on top of it, which peels it open, which flings it back at the vehicle.
Oh.
So even if you're using a regular winch hook, it should always go from underneath at the bottom, because that's going to be the safest method of attaching to it. There's the ball detent pin that's stored into the body that you can put into this little hole to lock the latch into place. So if you have a really crazy load, you can deal with that. But for the most part, it gave you the quick access opening, but also give you a closed system mount, which by default allowed you to be able to create a built-in soft shackle in between this to quick on and off and use that, right? Now, for the rest of your guys' setups, like the way that most of these are on here, because you're already utilizing soft shackles in the fronts of the lines anyway. So who's got the black truck, the third one in here?
The Bronco?
Okay.
Yeah.
So like that's our ProLink. That's our ProLink E. So that's like the larger version of like our regular ProLink. Did you get that here a couple years ago,
I
right?
bought it last year, the year before.
Okay. So that one, it gives you that whole huge hole opening, so that way you can utilize the soft shackle through there, or the pin end of a shackle, or the body of the shackle, right, as it's attached into it, whether it's steel or hard shackles. You can use the pin end of a larger 7/8 shackle, so it's much more versatile of all the different components that you're going to attach to. Because the problem with running soft loops on the ends of the winch lines, a lot of it is when you get the line out, you also got to throw it, right? You're trying to throw it down to people, and as soon as that thing catches air, it moves, that's why it's so much safer. So when it breaks, the air will slow it down, right? Because it'll usually break in a straight line where steel cable will unspiral, right, itself. So that's why having like the FlatLink E, which is the foldable version of all those parts, that has the oval hole open, you can utilize it all in the same fashion that you're doing it with these, but the line's not out and it's totally tight and protected, right? And you're also not loading the soft shackles, because even when you look at the way that some of these are set up on here, you gotta, like if I were gonna come up here to try to use this thing, bump this thing in a free spool,
Yeah.
like, dude, I can't even get it out.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, because the line is bound up underneath of here, and then because this is loaded under tension, then I got to really work it to get this thing out of here, right, to utilize that. So it's also about the quickness of the use. So it's not just like we have these fancy parts on there. They're totally a lot more function than it is like to be seen, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So like we have a company that we work with called Innovacy, right? So they use them underwater for salvage.
Oh shit.
Because the billet aluminum displaces in salt water, so it almost floats. So when these guys go underwater, they can roll a whole armful of these things and go down and not weight the diver down and go set the rigging up in any kind of complex scenario because of the
What are they
soft
doing?
shackle.
Bringing the ship up?
Or whatever, pipeline, whatever it's going to be, right,
that's
underwater.
sick.
So you can see them rigged in conjunction there. So it's the same thing even with utilizing, like when you have a two pulley system, right? So you got to think about it. Like if you go out,
Driving all year last year. Was he?
oh awesome, yeah. So that's it right there.
Game changer.
Yeah, because that keeps the line in.
What kind of?
I've always wondered
Feels
about when they're
solid,
pulling,
though.
Yeah, it's billet aluminum.
No, this is aluminum?
Yeah, so it takes like 17 minutes, like 17 to 22 minutes, depending on the tooling, to machine this thing.
Yeah.
And then it gets tumbled in the bird, and then it gets mil-spec hard anodized. So then we also Teflon coat the inside of this too to help with the slickness of the fibers as it's spinning.
Yeah.
So even like this, where it got dropped, right? You see that right there, where that has kind of a rough surface right there on the end.
Yeah.
The advantage is that when you're using a soft shackle, right, you put your soft shackle through there, and as that's looped onto here, even when this thing is being pinched under load, it's never going to drag on that damaged end because of that larger inner radius.
Oh wow.
See what I'm saying? So it
Yeah.
doesn't drag on the legs, and it finds self-aligned because of that, right? So and that Teflon coating allows that thing to spin because these fibers are self-lubricating.
Yeah.
So that's how that works.
They worked it up at.
Wow.
So then what happens here too, then on the other side, when you have your line in it, right? You have your rope in here, it allows the rope to rotate through there, but when it goes to slack, the rope can't fall out. Road. But the cool thing, the best thing with this too, is well, one of the other neat features of this is so if you take this ring, and let's say you have this out, and you're gonna go rig this up somewhere. So we'll give you kind of just a small example of this, right? So get around the roll cage or do wherever you're gonna attach this thing. So with the soft shackle, once that goes on there, and I'll just do the wrong thing and tie a knot here in front of all you guys, but you know. But essentially, like if this is a soft shackle, you can set that up to whatever it is that you want to attach to, and even if you got some giant hook on the end of a line, you can roll that thing through here without having to deal with the cheek plates before you get that thing to come up, right? And then that acts as the pulley block.
Jeez.
Now the other deal is,
I
right?
don't
So
have a crawler and I want it.
So we go to this way where you have 2-to-1, right? So it's it's a 2-to-1 mechanical advantage, let's say, right? So you're going from your 10,000 pound winch, you have 10,000 pounds on this line, 10,000 pounds on this line, 20,000 pounds at the pulley, right? That's how theoretically that works. So the same thing is there's a technique called a Spanish Burton, right? So where you would have the pulley here and the two lines coming down through here. So that way you have the vehicle, so you got 10,000 and 10,000 to a pulley. Well, if you take a winch line extension all the way out to the vehicle, attach another pulley and come back to the first pulley, right? Now you've got 10 and 10 to 20. Now you've got 20 and 20 to 40. So you got 4 times mechanical advantage with 2 pulleys. So that's how my 2-door JK can extract some heavy, big, like 1-ton vehicles. Well, the other thing is when you're winching down, especially for guys that have suck down, like I've seen all kinds of things where they've just bent them or shattered or torn them. You can walk around all these pits and just see all kinds of stuff that's plundered apart. You know what I mean? So a lot of times, dude, trust me, man. I know more than anybody. It's like, people are like, that's JK mall crawler shit. Okay, got it. So we're gonna roll out now. We have our basic guide to winching manuals, our basic guide to kinetic and towing manuals. We are gonna have a winch, rope splicing, and lanyard manual. So we have a lot of cool techniques that we're gonna be talking about with this. Across a lot of boards, from overlanding to hardcore recovery like this, and to just general like fire and military recovery stuff, right? We have a new sling design that we've been working on that's really badass too as well. So we're gonna make a manual about that. And then we're also going to have another one on our load distribution plate and how that works. And then that's going to lead into releasing a vehicle recovery app, which will allow that to be able to, everybody can have it in their pocket to use, and then really kind of put in a structure of training and those types of certifications from us as a company and WARN, right? So it's a real big help for utility companies and a lot of guys, because dude, how many people show up to work and like their Nissan sedan or their Honda Civic to jump in their work truck that's got a 12,000 pound winch on it and they have no idea how to use it? You know what I mean? And they get no training on it whatsoever. So just about empowering that education, because you guys probably know more than anything. Dude, the amount of bullshit that's on YouTube right now, right? And people with their stupid opinions about things, there's a real fine line between entertainment and education. And a lot of these guys are just doing wrong, and I can't tell you how many times I have to be like, yeah, man, that doesn't work like that.
John, you're going to be John, you can be our official winch mob knitter.
Yeah.
What?
You can be our official winch mob knitter.
Nice.
Is that like a winch mob grandma?
Yeah, I'll sit in the rocking
You have to learn how
chair.
to bake cookies also.
Oh, I know how.
Oh, well, there you go.
So now what